Bliss with Elizabeth show, ready to go live in 3, 2.
When you think selling and buying a home,
when I think real estate, I think List with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Kline.
Elizabeth and Kline. And here is the host of the List with Elizabeth show, Elizabeth Kline.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the List with Elizabeth show. I am your host, Elizabeth Ann Kline. I work in Northern Virginia, helping buyers buy and sellers sell residential real estate. Love what I do. So excited to be an agent in this market. If you are looking for help in this market, feel free to reach out to me, 703-829-LIST, or check out our website at listwithelizabeth.com. If you are outside of the area and you are looking for a phenomenal agent in your area, please also reach out to me. I'm going to do the background search. I'm going to make sure that I connect you with 2 to 3 top-notch agents in your area. There are thousands of licensed agents across the United States, but only some of them truly are full-time professional and really can guide you in the best way. So we want to make sure you're tapping into the best people in your area. And if you have been watching the show for a while, please subscribe. Find the show. We'd like to spread the word on local real estate information. If you please keep the comments coming as well. I love hearing from the audience out there. Thank you so much for everyone who has written in. And if there's a topic you'd like to see covered, please let me know. So let's get into our show today. Today, we're going to be talking about sort of something that's a little bit behind the scenes. There is a person that can enter into your transaction called a transaction coordinator. And today we're going to focus on the buyer side of things. We had her on a show previously talking about how she can help on the seller side of things. But today we're welcoming Selamy back, an amazing guest we had before. Again, today we're going to talk about how she can help on the buyer side of transactions. There she is. Hi, Lane. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me again. This is so fun.
Of course. Welcome back. Welcome back. Lane is with Optimum Transactions. She runs her own company. She is also a licensed realtor here locally in the Northern Virginia area. But today she's going to be talking about her capacity as a TC, or a transaction coordinator. So Lane, you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in this role and who you are?
So mom of 4, wife to my husband, Arturo. He's amazing. He's also an agent in the area. We co-run a team out of the same office as Elizabeth, so I get to work with her in 2 capacities. And I was an elementary school teacher prior to switching to real estate. And when he got licensed, he saw a need, and he saw my strengths as organizer of all things chaotic. And I started working with him. And then it kind of grew over time. And a couple years ago, I started my own TC business. It's a lot of agents were asking for my help. And it's one of my favorite things. I love what I do.
That's fantastic. Real quick, what grade did you teach in elementary school?
I taught a little bit of everything K through 5, but I spent most of my time in 3rd and 4th grade.
Okay, this explains why you're such a good TC and you can handle 4 kids of your own. Everything's become clear to me now. Fantastic.
Yeah. Chaos organizer is my real title.
That's amazing. So Lane is someone that can work across different real estate agents, right? So she's just not someone that works directly with me or directly with one other agent. So how many agents could you potentially have contracts with at one time?
I think I have 10 agents that are currently working with Optimum, and our team has about 22 agents right now. So not everybody has the same level of volume. I can handle about 40 contracts at any given time. And that's before incredible. I start to get very, very stressed.
Yes. That's incredible. So Lane is someone who, let's say I represent you as a buyer. Once you go under contract, there then become a lot of question marks in the buyer's minds as to, well, what happens now, right? Because there's so much upfront focus on finding the right house, which obviously is the number one thing you need to focus on as the buyer. Let's find you the right house that fits your needs, square footage, layout, community, etc. However, once we find the house, it's not yours till you close. Okay. So once you go under contract as a buyer, usually there's about a 30-day period between going under contract and actually closing or settling on that house. So in that 30-day window, there's a lot of behind the scenes steps that are taking place, processes that are happening, systems that are going down. And someone like Lane is that person that I connect with to help micromanage all of these little steps along the way. Because a lot of times, again, as an agent, I'm out on the road showing other folks homes who haven't found their dream home yet, or I'm helping sellers, or I'm, helping prep a house for sale. So I'm not always available 24/7 quickly to get back to you all with questions, or the lender has a question, the title company has a question, the appraiser has a question. That's where someone like Lane is going to step in. So she's called a transaction coordinator, or a TC, as we call it in the business. So we're going to talk a little bit today about all the different kinds of things that she will step in and sort of help with along the way, just for your knowledge. So Lane, let's kind of jump right into this here. I know you work with a lot of contracts all at one time, but they all sort of have the same flow of getting from A to Z, right? Getting from ratification to settlement. And so you manage everything in between.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So once I have a buyer go under contract and we ratify, I then pass the contract over to Lane. And Lane, what are some of the initial steps that you'll take with that to get everything rolling?
So the first thing I do is study the contract. The template that we use in this area is the same no matter what house you're purchasing, but those blanks where you get to choose your terms, sales price, contingency deadlines, closing date, title company, all these things. Those are all different for every transaction. And there is a standard kind of typical timeline, but everybody has different needs on both the seller and the buyer side. So my first job is to just dissect it, analyze it, making sure all the timelines kind of go in a order that makes sense. And then I keep track of those deadlines. So I need to, that tells me, when do we need to order the home inspection? When does that deposit need to be in? What is the closing date that we're looking forward? And then we have to move backwards. Financing needs to be done by this date. Appraisal needs to be in before that. And it's just a lot of moving pieces, but they all are kind of, while separate, very interconnected and reliant on each other. So first thing I do is study it, make sure I've got my terms and my dates down. And then I disseminate that process or that contract to all the important parties and make sure that they're aware of the dates. In our contract, it says the number of days. So financing is typically about 100 or 21 days, but 21 days from date of ratification. So you have to figure out that date and keep that date in everybody's mind and know what you're working towards. So that's the first thing I do. And then the next thing is to give our buyers a heads up on what do each of those steps mean? When do we expect to take the next step within that step? And how do we protect you to make sure that we're keeping your money safe while we're going through these processes that might affect whether this contract closes or not?
And it's very important that the contract close. So
Yes,
let's just keep in mind that is the end goal of everything here. So step one, Lane's getting the contract. She's going to read it with you used a good word. You said study it, right?
Yep. I'm going to dissect it, analyze it, make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to be.
The way it's supposed to be. So she's getting a copy of that contract, not only over to obviously the other side, but she's getting it to the title company. Sometimes there's two title companies involved. So she's making sure both of them get that. She's getting that over to the lender. Sometimes the lender has an assistant. So she's making sure the assistant gets looped in. There are so many behind the scenes steps that take place. And again, if you are a buyer out there looking to possibly buy your first home and you're interviewing realtors, I would ask them, hey, do you use a TC? do you use someone to help step in after you go under contract? Because I'll tell you, agents that are not using TCs either are not very busy, meaning they don't have a lot of experience, meaning they may not be a great agent, or they are just not going to serve you in the best capacity, because it is impossible for one person to execute every step with precision and the detail that's needed, especially in something like this where there's so many terms, so many fill in the blanks. Like Lane was saying, there's how many days for HOA review period, how many days for appraisal, how many days for financing contingency, how many days for radon, how many days for termite, how many days for home inspection. She is the one sitting there creating this master spreadsheet, basically showing, here are all of our timelines, and Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we're not going to let you miss these. We're not going to let you fall into breach of contract. That's what a TC does from my perspective.
Yeah, I always recommend that agents have a TC, whether you do one deal a month or you do 100 deals in a year. Having someone who does this part of the job day in and day out is so helpful. It's another set of eyes, and it's another person in your client's corner protecting the biggest financial investment they're going to make.
Absolutely. And also just getting that contract into the brokerage and the compliance that's needed with, right? You can talk a little bit about that as well.
So your broker, and it really doesn't matter which brokerage that you operate under, everyone requires, it's a legal compliance department to review the contracts and make sure that everything is signed appropriately and follows the laws. But there's a system in order for them to receive that contract, and every document has to be put in the right place with the right information. And it's important that somebody who knows how to do that and can do it efficiently takes that off the agent's plate.
Perfect. And that is someone like Lane. So great. Let's move on to our next slide here. And we touched a little bit on this already, but just coordinating key milestones. So typically the very, very first thing buyers need to do once they go under contract is send in their earnest money deposit. So many times this is, it seems like a simple thing, but there can be 30 questions on, well, how do I send it in? Who do I send it to? Are you sure it's going to the right spot? Can we double check the routing number? What if I want to do a certified check? Which office should I drive it to? All of this stuff Lane can handle and can sort of guide you as a buyer with all of your specific questions, right?
Yeah, you have a lot of options. Back in the day, it used to just be a physical check and you had to drop it off to the office. And now you have a lot of options, wire transfers, secure mobile apps like mobile deposits that will go to the right person or right party. And especially if you're out of the area, I've been working on a contract now where the buyer is out of the area just on a work trip and can't make that deposit, but we've got backup options with wire transfers and apps that we can take care of it so that the buyer is still protected and within their timelines of when they need to do what they need to do.
Perfect.
And
so
manage all of that.
And then after the earnest money deposit goes in, usually the next big milestone is the home inspection. So what kind of steps do you typically take with that?
So I will provide, from the agent's recommendations, I'll provide options for them to pick an inspector of their choice, or they can provide their own inspector if they've got one. And we work on scheduling with the convenience of the buyer and the buyer agent's schedule in mind, but also you are entering into the seller's current home. And so they also need to approve that time. It needs to be convenient for them. With that, communication's done with the listing agent. So it's a lot of people, a lot of communication, a lot of coordinating, and sometimes some back and forth between inspector schedule, buyer schedule, seller schedule, agent schedules, and it can get pretty convoluted. But to have one point of contact that's making all of that happen and not leaving that to the buyer to make all of those decisions and appointments themselves is, I think, very valuable. They've got big.
Oh my gosh. I don't even think they could do it all by themselves. I don't think I could do it all by myself. It's truly, sometimes people think like, oh, I found the house and now everything, I just wait for closing. No, there are so many things that are now happening. Again, hopefully behind the scenes, so you don't feel so much of it as the buyer, but you just have one point of contact that's handling all of this for you. And I always like to tell my clients to think of Lane as an extension of me. She's an extension of me guiding you through this process and helping you without me personally having to get into the weeds or the details of the nitty-gritty.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I can step in and answer so many questions from, not only from working with you and knowing how you do things and how you help your clients, but also from my experience with lots of agents and lots of contracts,
Sure.
something that may seem scary or super urgent to a buyer who doesn't know the typical process of things. I can quickly, provide some relief and support in that moment when you're out on an appointment or at a different closing or showing a property, and they don't have to wait and panic.
Yeah. Sometimes the appraiser may call and say, "Oh, I'm running 3 hours late. Is that okay?" And I'm driving and I'm going, "Okay, let me get Lane on the phone so she can go ahead and reach out to the sellers, get back to the appraiser." All these types of things that happen in real time behind the scenes. That's something that the TC, I'm going to lean on the TC to help with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even things like just getting scheduled for settlement.
Right.
Like how many
of people's schedules.
Yes.
And,
yes.
What does the title company have available in the location that's convenient for you on the day that, the day for a buyer of settlement does not change unless it's agreed upon by all parties. So you're kind of locked into one day, but you've got your pick of times and your pick of locations. So we can be very accommodating to a certain extent, but there's still some back and forth with work schedules and kid pickup. And it never ends. And so having one person support that in real time versus having to wait for your agent to be available. Oh, wait. And then that preferred time that you wanted is now gone, taken by a different buyer. So speed to lead is the name of the game.
Yes. And so having someone like Lane on your team where as soon as you go under contract, she can start asking these questions like, "Hey, is settlement better for you in the morning or afternoon?" Proactively reaching out to the title company, securing a time and place that works for you early on the process. Because the closer you get to settlement, the more people start scheduling settlements, right? And a lot of agents will wait 2-3 days before closing to grab a time slot for their folks. So we always like to be way in advance, get everything scheduled and on the books ahead of time.
And especially, I know you work with a lot of buyers from out of the area. So when you've got military moves and, we recently had buyers in Hawaii that were, they weren't coming here to sign. They had to sign in Hawaii. So arranging a mobile notary, because it has to be signed in person. That was, you have to start early. You got to arrange all of those people and the timing and the time change. And it's a lot of moving pieces for something so simple, just scheduling an appointment.
Yes. Agreed. Okay. Let's move on to our next slide. So Lane is also going to be just sort of like a liaison between all parties. So once my buyer clients go under contract, I usually connect Lane on a text string with my buyers, because up to that point, it's usually just me and them back and forth. Meet me at this house. I want to see this property. I liked this. Let's put a contract in for that. Lane doesn't need to see all of that. But then once we go under contract, I'm connecting her in with the clients. She's then connecting the clients with the title company and the lender and the appraiser and all the different people that need to be involved. So the TC is really going to be kind of like, again, an extension of me so that the buyers feel like they always know who they're going to. All correspondence at this point is between myself, my clients, and Lane. The three of us kind of work together as a team. Lane, what are some of can you think of like any third-party stories that you have from the past about like how being the liaison was really stood out in your mind or is helpful to the clients?
This one I just did read last week, and it kind of links back to our first point of those dissecting that contract and disclosures and having another set of eyes, making sure all those initials, all those signatures, everything's in the right place. There was a home inspection contingency. I just got the contract. I was reading through, and seller initials were missing on a change in the home inspection contingency. And while it was agreed upon that they did have 7 days for an inspection and everything was signed, they missed just 2 little initials. And while that is, you would assume that everyone's going to go forward with the word and that the commitment that they made, that they'll allow the buyer to negotiate inspections and repairs. You never know what's going to happen if those initials don't get fixed and it's not fully solid. When you send over that home inspection report and your request for repairs or credit, if the seller and the listing agent all of a sudden want to say, oh, well, this wasn't fully signed, so we don't have to negotiate. That could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. So I was able to catch that, communicate it with the listing agent on the other side in a very respectful and professional way, and without causing, ruffling any feathers, and just saying, hey, quick compliance check, noticed these were missing, and they sent them back really quickly. And now our buyers are fully protected and get to negotiate in the home inspection.
That is very important, because if something goes sideways on the home inspection and the buyers thought they had the right to void the contract, and all of a sudden that is potentially not the case anymore, that could cause issues. And, I had a broker once tell me when I ran into a really sticky situation, and the broker just looked at me and said, Elizabeth, the contract is only as good as the integrity of both the parties, the buyers and the sellers. That is it. If someone wants to be difficult and not abide by the contract, no matter what it says in writing, we got to deal with it because it just doesn't even matter what's in writing. We want it to be done properly, and that's what Lane is there to do. But at the end of the day, we can't control unreasonable people or people who don't want to abide by what they've signed. That's just something, that's life, right? You can't control everybody or make everybody do the right thing.
No, you can't. But having another person, and I try to lead with kindness and respect in everything I do, even when that other agent on the other side of the transaction is being difficult. You just lead with kindness, and usually you can get people to do the right thing by being kind and kindly pointing them to what the contract says. And
Also, too, I think in the past, I've had agents say to me, if you weren't on the other side of this deal, this would have fallen apart because you problem solved. You helped find a solution. You weren't angry or debating or trying to stand up so hard for your clients that you got in the way of the deal going through, which is what everyone wants. Sellers want to sell, buyers want to buy. Players want to play, haters going to hate. Okay. So, you really, like you said, you have to be professional and kind through the process, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want the transaction to go through. So I think that's partly why we work so well together, because you and I are both solution oriented and professional and kind. I mean, there's no reason not to be all three, because you can be. Business can get done in a nice way, which is preferable.
And I think cooperating agents on the other side too, while I am an extension of you and I work for you, I am just enough removed as an independent contractor that the other agent will communicate with me and work with me as we work through some problem solving stuff, because emotions can run really high when you're dealing with tense situations and negotiations throughout the process. And it doesn't just stop once the contract's accepted. There's a lot of points of negotiation until you get to the closing table, and having a third person who's just wants to support everybody. I don't work for the other agent, but I do help them in a lot of ways by keeping the process moving. And I think everything
moving. Yeah. Sometimes too, I was going to say Lane has been extremely helpful when there's a repair issue that needs to happen at a home that's under contract. Let's say we go under contract and all of a sudden the microwave stops working. And so now what, right? We have to get a repair guy in. We have to potentially, let's say they can't repair it. Now the buyers have to decide, do they want a new microwave or do they want a credit? If they want a new one, well, what size? Is the seller going to install it, or are they just going to buy it? All these little nitty gritty back and forth, something that a TC can handle for you. And how many of these have we had? I mean, how many repair issues come? I mean, they come up quite a bit, actually.
I mean, yeah, something always comes up. And it's even if it's like at the walkthrough 30 minutes before you're going to sign, something always comes up. And I am you and your agent, Elizabeth, you're at the walkthrough and you're going immediately to the closing table. Who's going to figure out how that's going to get solved? Whether it is, holding money in escrow or calling a repairman or calling Best Buy and replacing the microwave altogether, somebody's got to figure that out, or at least get the plans rolling so that settlement's not held up and you're not in breach for not showing up to your 4:00 signing appointment.
I remember not too long ago, I had a final walkthrough at a new property. I had the buyers, and actually they found me from the List with Elizabeth show.
Oh, that's so great.
So anyway, I took them out for their final walkthrough, and the seller was there in the home, and his agent never told him that we were coming out for a final walkthrough. And Lane had confirmed it. She had the email saying, okay, no problem. We'll let our clients know back from the other side. But again, communication falls short. So I'm driving up. The buyers are sitting in their car. The seller's standing on his front porch like this, doesn't know what's going on, who's coming to my home. And that's again, somewhere where Lane can step in and quickly just ping the other side and say, hey, I think perhaps your client didn't get the message about the walkthrough. And then, oh yeah, no problem. They jump on the phone, call the client, say, hey, we dropped the ball on this. These are the buyers. This is their agent. They need to come in to do final walkthrough, and just smoothing things over like that at the last minute.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like I said, I'm just enough removed from the contract that making that call or having to break that news, nobody gets defensive, nobody gets upset. It's just facts, and they go and they problem solve. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely remember that day calling you a little bit of a panic. Okay, so I mean, the other thing a TC is going to step in and do, obviously, is do everything she can to ensure a smooth closing process, and that's sort of what we were just talking about. Part of the closing day for those particular clients was doing the walkthrough and then heading over to settlement. You want to speak a little bit on the closing process, Lane?
Yeah. So the closing process for me starts several days before, because I'm asking lender and title for preliminary copies of either the closing disclosure or the ALTA, which is the settlement statement. And I'm reviewing it to make sure that everything is in the right place. Taxes are broken down appropriately. Credits are put where they need to be. The deposits shown from the buyer's side. The sales price is correct. Agent commissions are correct. Home warranty is on there if they opted to get one, and who's paying for it. Is it in the right side? Termite inspection. I mean, there's so many things that need to be on that settlement statement that's more than just your new mortgage and the sales price of the home. And having another set of eyes that's looking at it several days ahead of time so that you don't get to the closing table and you're like, oh, wait, what is this number? And where did you get that? And then holding things up. I mean, it's a domino effect. So my job starts several days. Well, actually starts almost at the beginning of the contract when just scheduling it, but then to review all those documents and make sure that when the buyer sits down at the table with their settlement agent, that it's a smooth process. They've already seen these, nothing is new, and it's no surprises.
It's easy.
And no errors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so many times that preliminary closing statement comes over and something needs to be changed. Everyone is trying their best, but there's a flurry of details and information that we all need to help cross-check each other. So a lot of times, sometimes what's missing on the settlement statement is the rent back deposit. So if there's a rent back from the sellers, they typically leave a little bit of their proceeds behind just in case when they do finally move out of the home, the buyers have some assurance. That is missing a lot. Sometimes the taxes aren't prorated correctly. Depending on where the home is, sometimes property taxes are paid in arrears, sometimes they're not. HOA amounts, right, Lane? So many times you're going through and saying, oh, the sellers prepaid their HOA through the end of the year, they need to get a credit back for the amount of days they're not in the home, and that credit isn't on the statement. So again, combing through this before it hits our buyer's laps, so that at that point, everything should be correct.
Yep. Exactly.
And final. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So closing is certainly the end goal. And then just through the entire process, TCs provide peace of mind, right? For our clients primarily, but also for agents. For me, knowing, hey, if my clients have a question at 9 a.m. and I hit the road at 8:45 and I may not be able to respond back to emails till 4 p.m., she's on it. She's going to be proactively, getting back to our clients in a timely fashion, which makes everyone feel good throughout the process. And just, again, peace of mind. I mean, that's truly what you do.
Yeah. Well, it's my goal for sure. And, on the seller side, we're sort of just waiting for the buyer to do their due diligence, run their inspections, get their financing in order. And we're just kind of, sellers do have some tasks to complete throughout the process to keep things moving, but it's a little less intensive. And, they spend all that energy just getting the property ready for sale. But on the buyer side, in Virginia, it's buyers beware state. It's your job to do all the inspections within the timeline, get your deposit in by the timeline. And so I have to switch my hats a little bit from kind of a little more passive to a little more, I don't want to say aggressive, but a little more tiger-like, to make sure that everyone is looking out for the buyers and the money that they've already got on the line, waiting for that contract.
Yeah, the earnest money deposit. So any final thoughts that you want to throw out there about being a TC for buyers, or anything we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on today?
I love working with buyers. I love, there's something exciting about moving into a new space and making it yours. And there's so much excitement with that, but it can also be very, very stressful. The mortgage process is stressful. There's a lot of people to communicate with, and I take pride in making it as stress-free as possible for our buyers, so that they can really enjoy and soak up those moments of home ownership and moving on to the next thing. Sellers are fun too, but it's just a different experience when you're moving into your dream home.
Absolutely. Well, if anyone would like to get in touch with Lane, please feel free to reach out to her, Lane at optimumtransactions.com, or check out her website at optimumtransactions.com. I love Lane. She and I both work with within the Alexandria office at Sampson Properties, and would love to see anyone. If you all would like to meet with us at some point, or meet with Lane, or meet with me, please feel free to reach out. You can always reach me at 703-829-LIST. Lane, thank you so much for coming on. It's such a joy to have you. It's such a joy to work with you every single day.
Same to you.
Yeah, that's really all we have for today as far as transaction coordinators and how they can relate to helping you through the buyer process. So thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode of List with Elizabeth. Feel free to send over some comments on the show, and I'd be happy to get back to you, and we will see you next time on the show. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
When you're ready to sell your home, don't be silly and do it alone. You gotta get Elizabeth on the phone, or go to